Hi everyone. Today we're going to just go over the key points of chapter 1 in our methods textbook. Again, you would have read this chapter and answered some questions. I just want to hit those key points that you'll need to know for the rest of your lives as a teacher and then for the certification exams. Pause when you want to pause, but I'm going to go through pretty quickly. We're going to begin here. Methods of teaching second or foreign language. We really don't say foreign language anymore. It's considered inappropriate. So we use LOT, language other than English. So let's move on to page 2. So early methods of language teaching. The real biggie you need to know, and you do need to know this, is grammar translation. You all know it because you all would have done this in high school. They're still doing it now. All it is basically is teaching a grammar method and then having students do a worksheet to practice it, grammar translation. I have an example. I think I have an example here, one in Spanish. Here you have to conjugate, the right pronoun with the verb wait, and then will and water. And then you'd rewrite the sentence in English. Up here, you translate it from Spanish. And this is grammar translation. A lot of teachers still use this way to teach. It's an area that we know is not very effective anymore, especially with younger students, because you already know from your linguistics course that we really want to immerse learners into the language as much as possible, even the older students. It's just the example of, for example, if we were going to Thailand in January, would we want to sit in class 3 days a week for an hour and try to learn Thai? Or would we just do better to be in Thailand there for 3 weeks and learn those phrases that we get being immersed in the language? So this is the idea. Sitting and reading and trying to translate anymore is not really the most effective way to teach. But this is an early method that's still being used today because teachers are used to it, and it's kind of like easy, busy work. Okay, so you're going to, read all this. A natural method you don't really need anymore. A series method. Direct method, yada, yada, yada. Okay, just to read it, but you're really not going to need to know it too much. And then it talks about what a language is, what a language isn't. We're going to read this. Okay, you do need to know ALM, audiolingual method. This is the way that language is taught. And even now, this again has come back. It's the way that we used to teach in the military for, especially in World War II. I know my father was taught this for German, for the Korean War. It's when soldiers were just taught to memorize and repeat a language and phrases enough. They would just learn it, and repeat, and they really wouldn't learn the language. They would learn phrases. So it's just like me saying mahaba kaifa kalaka, and you'd repeat mahaba kaifa kalaka, mahaba kaifa kalaka, mahaba kaifa kalaka, mahaba kaifa kalaka. And this is it. It's audiolingual. You listen, repeat, you listen, repeat. And finally, you'd be able to say mahaba kaifa kalaka. And then I would let you know that that means hello, how are you in Arabic? And this is the method. This is how, and it's just come right back. You may have seen advertisement for Babbel. They say, we can teach you really fast in your car. This is it. They're just using ALM, audiolingual method. So they never deal with really the reading and the writing. They're just dealing with those oral languages. If you're an auditory learner, and you know this from Gardner, those of you that took the 185 or 1850 course, it's really great. I'm audiolingual, so I don't mind listening and hearing, but I also like to read and write. So it's a method that people will still use, that some people find effective, but you need to know ALM the rest of your life. Okay, Right. Suggest repeat it. No, you never need to use it. No, you don't need to know that. I had to know that, but that was in the 80s. Rationalist orientation methods. Okay, read this, just become familiar with it. Rules of language are psychologically real, yada, yada, yep. Language is innate, you need to know this. Humans can think in their own language, yes. The silent way, it's so funny. You don't need to know this. We used this in the early 90s. We don't really use it anymore. It's interesting. Read it. I met Catenu's wife, so read it, but you don't really need to know it. These are just methods. Community language learning, CLL. We don't really use it anymore. Don't worry about it. Problem posing. This is the idea of active learning, the idea that you have the big overarching question. Social reconstructivists, they like to go out there and try to improve things while teaching. So yeah, read problem posing. You might come across it. TPR, total physical response. Yes, you need to know this. We do this all the time. For the linguistics class, I put up some videos of shock language. And total physical response, TPR, is the idea that when we teach our students that we try to use as much as our body as possible. And it can be very simple. And I already taught you through ALM. Who remembers how to say hello? How are you? Hopefully you do. If not, I'd say mahaba, 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 mahaba. And that's, I'm waving. So that's hello, mahaba. And you can start using TPR to teach things. You can pick things up, and you can use the idea that students are going to pick things up. You can stand up to teach up, down, sit, stand. So it's total physical response, the idea that the students are going to get up and move around. This is something we still use all the time. It's really key. And it's something that you need to be familiar with. And especially in younger students, we use it in any type of teaching. So TPR makes you read it and are familiar with it. I see my screen is a little small. We'll see if that's better. We call it TPR. You will this will be on your final exam. No, your CST, sorry. Let's see. Natural approach. This is Krashen. You will need to know Krashen, so you need to read this. Krashen is a huge theorist, and he really talks about the idea of comprehensible input. So you need to read this as well. And I have a little, what are those, PowerPoint that I'll post. And this is the idea that language learning needs to be meaningful. If the students don't understand what you're giving them, if it's not comprehensible what they're getting, that comprehensible input, if it's not meaningful, they are not going to learn. So we need to have comprehensible input. And this is why grammar translation doesn't work anymore. But if you're going to teach the idea of colors, or let's say the plant cycle, here it is, the life cycle of a plant, it needs to be understandable to students, so that you need to bring in the plant. They need to be able to take apart the plant, and they need to see those parts. And this is what Krashen says. We need to make sure that it's comprehensible input, that students understand what they're getting. This is a key aspect of language teaching. We also have the idea of I+1. I don't know if this comes up in this chapter. And this is just like that zone of proximal development through Vygotsky. I think I put this up. If not, I'll put it up in the class. It's in linguistics. It's in this class, and it's in linguistics and methods. But the zone of proximal development through Vygotsky is that idea that you're in that perfect zone, that students are teaching, that are learning that's not too easy, not too hard. Because if it's too easy, what do students do? They check out. They're bored. If it's too hard, they check out. They're bored. You really want to be in that zone of proximal development. You have just enough that you're not quite learning. You need a little bit of help to learn and understand. That's a zone of proximal development. That's the same idea as I+1. It's I plus a little bit of information, and those students really are in that sweet spot of learning. So you're going to come across Krashen for comprehensible input and I+1. You need to know that the rest of your life. And also for teaching, we want to make sure we're in that zone of proximal development, that we're using that I+1, that we really are engaging those students, because if not, they're checked out. And it's just like right now, if you're checked out and you're multitasking and you're on your Facebook and doing this, but thinking you're listening to my lecture, I am not in your sweet spot, then I am failing you as a student. So put down your cell phone, put down whatever it is you're multitasking, and pay attention. Okay, all right, let's keep going. Okay, scenarios. Okay, yeah, read the scenarios, yada, yada. Summary of methods. Oh, great. Just read the summary of methods. New York State Department of Education. We do have state standards that we use for teaching. Those state standards now, we moved from Common Core to next generation state standards. I'll post those probably not till the next module when you begin lesson planning, to become used to those standards. Some of you have used those standards if you've taken the other planning courses. Others use it'll be the first time you see them. Reviewing these methods, I better move myself. Grammar translation, make sure you know it. I'm going to tell you the ones you need to know. Grammar translation, ALM. Problem pausing, TPR. That's it. Those are the ones you really need to use. Okay, Council of Great School, California's. Oh, yeah. Let's see what you need to hear. Okay, so you need to know here, and I think I have it in my textbook here. You need to have the idea of long-term English learners. And I think it defines them here. Let me pause, see if I can find it. Okay, it's right here. I'm sorry I cut off, but it's in your book. Long-term English learners. And the acronym is LTEL. And these are students that are just not quite learning English the way they should be. And usually they don't have the background of language learning. They might not have the supports at home. We already know that language learning takes a long time anyway. If they're immersed, it comes more quickly. But sometimes we have students, you'll have them year 3, year 4, and they're just not learning the language. So we want to identify them as long-term English learners. The other are SIFEs, and we have a lot more SIFEs now. And SIFEs are students with formally interrupted education. These are usually our students that have been refugees, and they are in their home school, in their home country, let's say Somalia. They flee the country. They're put in a refugee camp for a year, 18 months. Then finally they come to the U.S. So they've been out of formal education. They come here, and they may come here as a 12-year-old, but they haven't been in school for 2 years, and the last school they were in was in Somalia. So it's a student with interrupted formal education. So you need to know those SIFEs, and we now can identify them as a newcomer. And a SIFE student is really a challenging student to get because they're older and they haven't had that formal education. So just get used to the idea of long-term English learners and SIFE students. Let's see. This has a little bit of, let's see, information. Yep, you need to know all this. Here we have emergent bilinguals. And remember I told you had to become familiar with the levels of English language development. Our textbooks will call them different levels, different things, and this is emergent bilinguals. And it's just an idea that these are the students that are learning 2 languages, sometimes 3, and challenges they face. So make sure you read that. Let's see. Principles for effective teaching. Okay, and here is the review, and this is what now the textbook's going to talk about, is these things that we're going to begin dealing with and become effective teachers for methods. So make sure you review these, but we're going to introduce it here with Chapter 2. All right, that's it for the overview. See y'all later.